Всем привет снова. Пообедали вкусно? Хорошо, хватило всем? Только теперь одна просьба, не засыпайте, а то знаю, что такое хороший обед. Окей, передаю слово спикеру. Я думаю, мистер Флорин уже вам рассказывал пару тем. Ну и сейчас у нас динамик DAST. Думаю, будет интересно. Прошу, Florin, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. I have this one. Hi everyone. My name is Florin. Some of you have already seen me. Some of you have not. We're going to talk for about maybe the next 30 minutes is dynamic analysis, DAST. I'm going to slowly take you to the topic. The way we ran this presentation previously, or a similar one, was if you have a question, feel free to ask it as we go along. Raise your hand. If it's a really good fit at a moment in time, I'll try to answer it. If not, we can revisit it back at the end. So don't feel afraid to ask questions. I know it was lunch, and usually I get sleepy after lunch. So the more questions you ask, hopefully the better we'll stay awake. Things will get better. Can I keep this like that? It works like that. That's fine. I'll keep it like this. No, it's fine. It's fine. I want like.
For stream.
Okay, the stream can't see. Well, we'll use it like this. That works as well. Okay, some people still coming in, so we'll start by a show of hands. We did this previously, and the vast majority of people in here were a QA tester, but how many security people do we have in the room? Security testers? Security anything? Alina, you count? You can raise your hand. Okay, 3, 1, 2, 3. Did I miss anyone? Okay, that's cool. That's cool. How many developers, or I will requalify this question, how many developers or people who write code do we have in this room? Yes, I got more hands than last time. And how many QA testers do we have in the room? Okay, cool. So this is the session for you. This will link a bit more back to what you're doing. And please do ask a lot of questions. You hear them clapping next door. Like, we want to be laughing and saying jokes and having questions. So I think it's time for us to start the session. My name is Florin Coada. I work for IBM United Kingdom. And in this picture here, I've been sort of trying to explain the concept of dynamic analysis to Einstein. It worked really great up to a point. He wasn't really a security guy, and he got bored with me quickly. It wasn't a fun experience for anyone. Some of the main features of this guy, I've been with IBM for about 4.5 years now. I'm slowly creeping into my 5th year doing security. It's pretty good fun. I like video games. I like video games a lot. I just found out that one of my favorite Dota teams is playing just next door. My heart is filled with pain. And I also have a passion for phishing, and I don't like to answer random emails. So if you send me an email and I don't answer it, if you somehow get my email address, don't be upset if I don't answer, but people don't usually email me. So anyone here familiar with what dynamic analysis is? What DAST means? By show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. So dynamic analysis stands for, or DAST stands for Dynamic Application Security Testing. It's pretty much as having a hacker in a box. It's a tool that allows you to run a lot of simple checks to identify any potential vulnerabilities in your applications. The definition that Technicopedia gave here was that it's test an application or a software product in an operating state. What this means is, in here we're working with running applications. The same thing you're working with QA. QA is pretty much, I would say the same. I'm not an expert in QA, so please don't shout at me. But it's a bit of black box in some sense. You're just sending stuff to the application and you know what you want to see out. Dynamic analysis is very similar to that. An interesting story about how dynamic analysis as a technology came to be and how it created a market of several $million. It's a long time ago, there was a company that used to sell firewalls, web application firewalls. Anyone familiar with those? Know what they're doing? A web firewall is something you put in front of the application, and when a hacker and an attacker tries to send some malicious request to your application, the web application firewall will look at it and say, nah, that's not going to my application, that's garbage. Kick it out. Now, when they're trying to sell it, one of the problems they had was, how do I demonstrate this to customers? I'm not going to stand there and just keeps sending requests. It doesn't really work well. It was really slow, really hard to demonstrate. So what some engineers thought about doing was, oh, what if we write this little tool that sends automated tests to the application with a lot of potential hacks, and then just show them in the firewall logs how things are going. So they've done that, and they've built a tool. And one day they're in front of this customers, and they're presenting this technology to them, presenting this firewall. And they're showing them the tool, and they're showing them the firewall. The customer looks at the other tool and says, what's that? What's that you're using right there? It's like, the thing that sends requests to the application, what is it? And they're like, no, some utility we've built. And later on, that product turned to be one of the first dynamic analysis tools. It used to be called Watchfire, which then got acquired by IBM, and it's now AppScan standard. But that's sort of how dynamic analysis came to be. Came from an accident, and now this is one of the most well-known technologies in doing security testing. It's a tool that's often associated with pen testing and pen testers, but do not consider this to be a replacement for your pen testing. It's a cool tool that allows you to speed up stuff, but it's not a pen tester. So the way this usually works is a bit like this. I'm first going to point my application at or whatever I'm using to the website, and I'll start going through the website like an honest user. In this case, this guy looks like whatever the name of the guy from Breaking Bad was, Bryan Cranston. And I'll start going through the application and look at all the different pages. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm sort of mapping the application, preparing for my attack phase. I'm exploring it. I'm going through it, trying to understand what's happening. One of the really cool things about QA testing is that you already have all of this information. So you can slowly train the tools on what's the right behavior to do here. You can train the tools to do a lot of work for you. That's why the topic is called more value, less work, because we can reuse a lot of the assets you already have developed in terms of Selenium and other functional testing. Now, the next phase is where the interesting part happens. Now that we know how the application looks like, I know all the different pages, I know all the different forms you have on your website and everything else I can start messing with. There is a huge list, and when I say huge, it's immense list of different tests the tool can start sending to your application to try and hack it. Based on the response that we get, we can start saying, okay, you have a SQL error showing up in your user UI, well, that's probably a database injection I can do there. I know I can reach your database with whatever request I want. For an attacker from that point on, this is just a case of going through his toolbox, picking the right tool, and starting exploring your database until he finds what he wants. He or she. I've seen female pen testers as well. Now, throughout this session, we're going to talk about a few things. Now, DAST templates. When I'm going to mention a DAST template, I'm pretty much referring to a configuration that those tools are using to do the testing. It tells you how to log into an application. That's really important when you do dynamic analysis. It will talk about how to do the testing, what type of tests you want to run. In the previous session, we said that not all the security is the same. You know, developers will do some scans looking for some stuff. QA teams will look for some stuff. Security analysts, pen testers will look for everything because they're meant to do that. It's in their job role. The next thing we're going to talk about is the two keys that they're not in the test sort of template itself. The test policy, and this test policy is, as I said, list of tests I want to run, tests I want to go against, and sort of vulnerabilities I want to check my application for. I use vulnerabilities in quotes because whatever comes out of these tools, there are findings, there are potential issues. They only transform into vulnerabilities when the security team does confirm, okay, that can be exploited, that can damage my application, so it's a vulnerability. And finally, it's manual explorer data. And by manual explorer data, I'm referring to information about the application, which pages there are, what parameters to use to go through the application, how should my application be explored. This type of stuff you do in QA with Selenium. Say, hey, Selenium, you know, for this page, use this type of data. If feedback response to 100, I'm good. And the things I mentioned, though, separately is because the test policy, you can always define whatever you want. So you can share some of your work, some of your manual explorer data with the security teams, and enable them to do some of the dynamic analysis testing. Some of the requirements for dynamic analysis, I think they'll be somewhat similar to QA. It's a running application. How many of you here work with running applications during QA with a running website? By show of hands? I expect a lot of you will. The next thing you do, you need a test account. Can't really go through an application if you don't have a test account. Now the third one, and this is my favorite topic, and we can talk about this for days. Disabling the third-party security system. If you have a CAPTCHA, CAPTCHA stands for Completely Automated Public Turing Test to tell computers and humans apart. You cannot really do automation testing or computer-driven testing if you have a CAPTCHA. If you're trying to go through a CAPTCHA that asks you, show me all the cars in this set of pictures, if you have that AI, sell it to someone for a lot of money, go have holiday for the rest of your life. But do disable those systems or have them prepared for security testing. Even QA testing, I imagine, you must do something to set a value to be able to go through the login again and again. And that's why this is important. And finally, you want to make sure you have access from the test system to the app. You can't really do dynamic analysis if you can't reach the application. It's as simple as that. HTTP request goes from my test tool, needs to reach my application. You can't test them if they don't talk to each other. Any questions so far? Some people are already falling asleep in the middle row. I'm looking at you. I'm just joking. So this is what we were talking about with the security gates previously. So different types of phases will use different types of tests. Now, if you're looking to do a security test immediately after developers finish building their code in a development environment, you want to run very quick scans. You don't want to explore everything. You just want to look at those things that have forms on them, which are usually the main attack vectors for hackers. And you want to look for a small subset of issues. You don't want to look for everything. Developers will not answer to that well. One of the previous questions I had in the session we did before is, how many often are you told off by developers for sending them bugs which are not real? Oh, that's not a problem, it's a feature. It's okay that my application goes down. Maybe once in a while I have some need to turn it off, especially if you're before a release. So you want to focus your scanning and look at very focused things. The next one is the QA. Now, QA for dynamic analysis is really useful because you know how the application works. You have the application in a running environment. You have the application in a stable environment. You have access to the test accounts, or I hope you do. And we can reuse some of the artifacts that you already have. And I'll mention again, any functional testing you might have that we can record. If it's an HTTP tool, we can record it. And finally, you have the security part. Now, while all of these steps do security, is not the same type of security. Those guys at the end, the security team, they're going to put their hoodies on and put their anonymous mask on and start tinkering with your application. And sure, they're going to use some of the tools you're using, but they will go the extra mile. They will start tinkering with it manually. So even if they're doing security testing, not all security testing is the same. Each security testing can be tailored for you. In terms of QA testing, one of the most common concepts is automating dynamic analysis right next to it. You have your environment, you explore the application, let the tools see the data you're using to explore the application, and then the testing tool can go take that data, start poking the application, and find something for you. When you have something, open a defect for the developer, fix it. It's just another defect. It's not a security issue. It's a defect like anything else. Regression defect, test it. This can be seen as regression testing. You didn't have a SQL injection previously, you have it now. Regression issue, go and fix it. Now, there are some challenges with dynamic analysis, and I've decided to split this into the main two topics, traditional DAST and sort of new world and what should be doing next. But traditional DAST is not necessarily suitable for modern companies. It's the analyst dynamic analysis. It's a tool from security by security. It was meant to allow people to assist in the testing, find new stuff. It was mainly focused on them. It tended to be quite slow. You have to send a request when we wait for a response. You're doing thousands of tests. It can take a while for dynamic analysis to finish. There's a configuration you need to do for each scan. Again, and the coverage of applications is not great. We're dealing with a lot of JavaScript. You're building cool UIs. You're building all those modern interfaces where developers are building them. You just have to really struggle to do the testing for them and be really frustrated because it doesn't render on Chrome or it doesn't render Firefox or on Internet Explorer and whatever. But when you do dynamic analysis, you need to be able to explore the application. And out-of-the-box tools struggle to do it. It's not as easy as you think. They can't mimic the user behavior that well. So that's where the test scripts you have that go through the application and tell the Selenium script or whatever else you're using, I keep saying Selenium, they have to pay me at the end of this, will help you figure out stuff, and they will help you show that information to the tooling. Scans tended to be quite wide because pen testers want to know about everything. They want to know every potential attack vector they have. Developers don't. They want to know what should they fix in order to have a good release and not be shouted at. A lot of the things can be mitigated against. They want to know about those things that even if they mitigate against, if something goes wrong, they'll be responsible for it. And finally, it's manual exploration was required. People had to go through it and do a lot of tinkering with it, and it's not really embeddable in the SDLC. Security tools want people to go deep. I think someone was asking previously about what type of machine I like to use for pen testing, and I said I don't do pen testing. Pen testing uses those old type tools. They want to know everything, go through it. They like to go and tinker with stuff and play with it and install on a Kali Linux or on a different version of offensive parrot, whatever's out there nowadays. Now, modern DAST, it needs to change. It needs to use APIs, right? We talked about this. You need to be able to map tools to processes. You need to integrate tools with people and process, not integrate tools with other tools. That's the second step you need to do. You need to work with existing tools and reuse the assets, and this is where all those functional testing comes into play. You will know how to work with the applications, how to explore them. You need to be able to leverage that. It needs to be tailored for the developer. All of these findings you'll get, they need to go back to the developer and make sense to them. If this goes back to the developer and it does make sense, why should he ever bother to sponsor you using this tool? Why should he ever bother to help you? Maybe build a little automation script for you or whatnot. You should be able to test web applications and web APIs. I don't want to say a long time ago, but a while back, internet was all about websites, web application pages, click on them. That changed. When business started booming, they started developing, we started seeing a lot of web APIs. You don't actually need to have a website to have a component. You can have a web API and offer all your functionality through that. And you need to be able to test for that. And again, QA sort of knows how those APIs look like because they work with developers. There's no need for a security team to go back and refigure, oh, which APIs do I need to talk to? Where should I do a get? Where should I do a post? Because QA will know when they're doing the testing against the web APIs, or I hope you do. And it needs to help you improve the scan coverage, find more stuff out of the box. And you do want to improve the focus. You only want to scan what's new. You want to have a way of looking at what's being recently added to the application rather than want to scan the whole thing again and again. So how do we do all of this? Well, making this work means that we need to have a system in place. Dynamic analysis sort of wants to find applications in the running environment, but how do we expose what's new? Now, one of the things we can do is we can record the testing traffic. How many people here use HTTP-based tools to do QA testing? Some people will. Some people are asleep. I don't blame you. It's been quite boring so far. But you want to be able to reuse that. You've done the work once, so the DAST tool should be able to record that for you and reuse that because you already have the information available. You want to focus on new areas. If you've just built a new feature for your application, you have the functional testing for it, record the functional testing for that, send it to the tooling for testing, get back the results. That gives a bit of incremental analysis and lets you see what's new in your application and what's broken in your new part of your application. You want to be able to quickly adjust what you test for. Maybe Heartbleed has just been released. You want to do a quick check against your applications to find out what's happening. Now, Heartbleed is one of those security issues that has been very popular a few years ago. It even has its own logo and website. That's how popular it was. But there are other type of issues that come out every single day that affect the web applications. I think 22% of the vulnerabilities that were found last year and people talked about were related to web applications. So there are always new stuff you want to be able to test for. And finally, you want to find some of the stuff that can only be found with dynamic analysis. Like there are different ways of doing testing. There's stuff with code scanning. There's stuff with interactive scanning. Dynamic analysis has its own way of finding some unique things. And the benefit of it is they're actionable results. And I'll try to show you a result at the end, and hopefully it will make sense for you. Now, it's really complicated to do one, but this is sort of how the whole scanning setup works. The first thing you want to do is you want to tell the tool, OK, this is how you explore my application. You either log in yourself and you use these cookies to track the exploration, or you're just going to reuse the data I'm giving you. You want to sort of mention which parts of the application you want to exclude. Okay, you don't want to, if you have a page that's going to delete stuff, maybe you don't want to try to scan that page. You do some manual analysis on it and check it. And also, you want to record and verify the login. The login is really important when you're doing testing because you want to stay in session. What stay in session means, if you're doing the testing, very often you will be kicked from that application. Maybe you do something wrong, the application decides to kick you, or you click on the logout button when you explore it, it kicks you out. What you want to be able to do is consistently log yourself back in and start retesting the application, because after the login page is where the attackers are going to go after you. All those juicy little forms you have talking to the databases, that's what they want. They want to access those, and then they can start playing with your application. Now, you want to be able to reuse existing assets. In this case, I've been talking about Selenium, but I've been doing this with SoapUI, Postman. I've also built my own JavaScripts to do the functional testing for some fictional banks. You can use everything that uses HTTP requests. And one of the things, the first thing you do is you have your traffic, you have your tool, you want to test your application, put the browser in the middle, and then start proxying that. You get the data from the proxy. In this case, I'm testing my login page. Not sure if you can probably read it there, but I'm sort of sending my login. Obviously, plain text password in user is not the greatest way of doing security, so don't do that. But it sort of explains that I've identified something here. I know what the request is, and I know the parameters. And what the tool can start doing now is start playing with those parameters and start doing the testing and find issues for me. And the benefit here is you don't, and I'm not sure if you're here for the second session of the day, but you don't always have to do a pen test on your applications. You will have to do one once in a while, and I do recommend that. But this will allow you to find those very easy to detect vulnerabilities. Hackers will have these tools. And what's even more interesting is they'll have a list of websites they scan every single time, and there's going to be a website they can search and check, oh, you know, Google Dork will tell them, hey, this website has this type of vulnerability if you want to go and try and play with it. So there's a lot of stuff you can do. This sort of helps you protect against that. Get the basics right and stay secure. In terms of how the whole thing looks like, in a running environment, this is sort of a sample model we had. We based it on Jenkins. And what we did is I did some functional testing. I was using SoapUI to do my testing in that case. And I recorded the traffic. Now, I have my colleagues put Selenium. I've been playing a lot of SoapUI recently. I guess it's the same thing. And we've been proxying stuff. And I'm only testing the new parts I was developing for a little API I built in one of our testing applications. And the benefit of this one, I was able to run my dynamic analysis in a few minutes and find all those SQL injection, cross-site scripting, all those easy-to-exploit vulnerabilities, and all the well-known vulnerabilities. Once I find that, I was able to put those back into a defect tracking system as defects. Whether you're using TFS, you're using Jira, you're using GitHub, whatever you're using. If there's not something built, you can always build a custom integration, or we can build one with you, and then go back again. Every time I do continuous testing, and this helps me make sure I'm not missing out on the basics. Now, developers are focused on releasing code on time and releasing code that's clickable. Okay, if it crashes, they're going to be told off. But they're not necessarily focusing on doing security, where they just might forget once. And these tools are there to enforce that and help them figure out what's happening and know about these issues. Now, in terms of do's, it's a lovely and long list, but I'm not going to go through everything. But whenever you start trying something new, developers do a few pilots first, try it out. Some things might work, some things might not work. Do start with focus on high priority issues. If you're looking to do this type of testing, don't try to scan for everything. Security team might love you, developers won't. Also, scans will take longer. So focus on those really well-known issues. Talk to your pen tester, talk to your security team, reach out on forums and ask people. Look at OWASP Top 10, which is one of the very well-known application security standards out there. Look at what they recommend and start with those really top items. Focus on those first. Work with the security teams if you have one. You don't have to do their job. You only have to automate a part of it. It's going to be easier for everyone. You'll get some value for doing more. So you can showcase your work and say, hey, look at us. We're also doing security, which is great. Your developers will be thankful because they don't have to wait for a long time at the end for pen testers to come back with results. Never pen test can take from a few days to a few weeks. So you'll actually speed up their release time, which is great. And finally, do automate as much of the dynamic analysis as you can. If you can automate all of it, that's great. Put a script in Jenkins, let it run for you every weekend. Just send some results back to developers on Monday morning and let them work with it. Don't. Now, if you are looking to do this as QA testers, don't try to be as thorough as you can with security. You're not security experts. You're not there to do security analysis. You're not there to investigate every single little issue. There is a pen tester that will do that at some point. Your job is to automate and find the really easy to get issues, the low-hanging fruits, we call them. It's a weird phrase, but do focus on getting those high priority things. Don't expect developers to know what to look for. They're not security experts either. If you see a security issue and you don't understand it, it's a very good chance that the developer doesn't understand it either. But the purpose of these tools is to find those things and train you. So as you find those issues, work with developers, understand what's happening, work with the security team to get explanations, and start building what we call secure coding guidelines. This is a SQL injection. This is what it means for our company. This is how we recommend fixing it for this type of code. So the next time the developer sees the issue, he can go to your local wiki, conference, GitHub, whatever you're using, look at the fix, understand how to implement it, go and do it, rather than trying to figure it out himself. What's this issue? How do I do it? And finally, don't sort of lose sight of the goals. It's not a way of replacing pen testing. It's not a way of doing complete security. It's just helping you to get the same goal, which is to speed up the release time. That's all it is. We're not changing anything else. We just want developers get faster from idea to production. Where's the value in this? There always has to be a value for you to try and attempt this. Now, the automated processes will give you regression-like testing for security. You don't have to always go to a pen tester for every single small change you do. You'll have a lot of the basic things covered, so you'll have a good chance of covering all the basics. Most people that get hacked, they get hacked because they don't cover the basics. No hacker will for always try to stalk a specific target unless they have a very specific reason to. Most of the times, these are what we call attacks by chance. They just find something about your application, and they go after it. I was giving an example in the previous session. The most common attacker that will come after you, it's probably like a teenager. He's seen how to run an attack on YouTube. It's probably like 50,000 tutorials on how to do SQL injection. He thinks, oh, I need to find a PHP application. He finds a random PHP application. Could be your application. He'll try some SQL injection, like he's seen on YouTube. If it works, he could actually pull out some data, cause some damage. It's not something you want to be in the news for. There's a case in the UK where a company got hacked, and the oldest kid was like 17-year-old. And a 17-year-old hacked them, and it was quite expensive for them. You can imagine it's not easy to lose 20,000 records or so and get away free. The focus scans, the benefit of not looking for everything is you give developers things they can work with. You get things you can work with. Now, it could be a gateway for your career to move into security, sort of become a bit of a what we call a security champion, where you don't specifically specialize in security, but you learn more about it. And as you learn more about it, you can work with developers, you can start working with the security teams. So it's also a nice gateway for your career if you aim to do that. The incremental scanning, it's the part where you only scan the new features. You explore it, you exploit it. If you find something, cool, fix it. If not, go to the next step. And finally, the improved coverage for scans. This comes from reusing the assets that you have as QA teams. All those scripts to explore the applications, to test them. In some cases, you might even do manual testing for your applications, right? Click through them, record stuff. You can even use that. Just proxy your browser through the tools, record that, and then replay it back. It just gives you that additional level of clarity when you're doing your testing. And for now, this has been everything. I'm sure a bit of a dry mouth by now, but I do hope you have some questions. And please fire away.
Это было так сложно, что нет вопросов?
We accept them both English, Ukrainian. I have a translator now, so we're all good.
I have a question regarding estimation. How will you estimate your activity in the project?
How long is the scan going to take, or?
In overall, I mean, working with scan, maybe with analysis from previous year.
It's a good question. It always depends on how complex your applications are. It could be something as simple as 5 minutes every few days, right? Because you just set up a script. For example, one of the cloud solutions my colleagues are demonstrating outside on the IBM booth is it's a cloud-based, and it has like a Jenkins plugin. All you have to do is set it up in Jenkins once. This is the URL I want to test. These are the credentials I want to use. You set that up, and then you let it run. That could be as long as it takes. In some cases, you might want to do something more complex, which I've seen some customers doing, where you play with the tool yourself. You start using those QA scripts, go to that next level of expertise, and that could take a bit longer. That could take a few days to set up, might take a few days of maintenance once every year. So it always depends. It always depends who does it. A security tester will spend a lot more time on this than the QA tester would do. But I would say, maybe dedicate 1 hour a week, make sure it runs, maybe look through the results, understand what's happening. It always depends. It varies. Processes can be changed. The tools should map to your processes. So that's how you decide how much time. I only have half an hour. Choose the approach that only takes half an hour for you to use each week. Sorry, I don't have a concrete answer for the question.
Okay, thanks. Another one?
Hi, thank you for the speech. I have a question related to difference between DAST tools and approach and vulnerability scanning at production. So is there a principal difference between these tools and approaches?
So there are some differences. So I think you mentioned the term vulnerability scanners. So when we're talking about security scanners, there are different tools you can use out there. There will be DAST that's specifically known for application testing. They focus on testing applications and applications alone. You're also going to come across security vulnerability scanners. And the wider term usually refers to scanners that are being used to scan, to some level, web applications, but just a basic level. And then they'll scan infrastructure, they'll scan networks, they'll scan for open ports, anything that could be used by a hacker. In terms of how you use the dynamic testing, there are usually two places where you can use it. You can use it in your production environments. And at this point, in the production environment, you can go full crazy on it, right? You can test for everything. You can go really deep. You can start playing with the forms, put data into the forms. You don't really have any concerns. You're not worried about putting the application down. If you put it down, you restart it. So you can go full-blown, do everything. Production, on the other hand, it's a more sensible job you have to handle. Production is more about, I want to catch those things that don't cause problems with my database, with my feedback forms once I do the testing. So if you remember when we talked about how the testing is happening, we said we'll find some forms and put data into them. If you're in a production environment and you're putting stuff into a database, we're not going to hack your database. We're not going to try to do a delete everything, but we will create some garbage in there. So you need to be careful with that. Also, we don't want to run like 1 million tests at once, because in some cases, we could find something with the application that just puts it down. If your application is down for half an hour, it could be quite expensive for production. And also, we don't want to send any feedback forms. So what we usually do in production, we disable all of the form filling. We just look at some of the navigational parameters. So for example, if your website uses a parameter to navigate between different pages, we will try to use those. There was a case where someone had a cross-site scripting because of that on the error page, because the error page simply said, we do not know this path, and used the path that was in the URL. And someone would just put a JavaScript in there, and all of a sudden he had the login page of his tool. So yeah, production, you want to be a lot more careful. Do less tests. Again, we're talking about focused. You want to be a lot more focused on production, not do invasive tests. You want to be very protective of the environment. So to summarize the two, test, you can go full crazy. Production, no form fills, no invasive tests, only surface poking where possible.
Okay, thank you very much for clarification. Another question relates to analysis of DAST tool reports. So we are using DAST tool at our company, and we usually get a report with about 80 vulnerabilities with different levels of severity, major, low level severity. So, and usually it requires manual analysis. So how to integrate it into CI so that we cannot allow this build to move to next level of to next environment, to next level of pipeline, if certain level of error happens.
So what we usually try to recommend here is use security gates, and be aware of the fact that when you scan for everything, it's more suited to do it at the end. But if you want to include it in the CI, immediately after you've built something or QA, you might want to start using rules that focus the scan only on the top ones. Now, your security team should probably know which are the most common exploited vulnerabilities for your type of application. There are some forums that tell you, what type of attacks are running against the specific region. And they should look at that information and start defining those policies and what to test for. So in a different slide, we talked about test policy. So they should help you configure those test policies to only look for those issues that are really relevant to you. You can do a test for everything at the end. You can mitigate against them. You can address them. But what you want to do initially is focus on those things that should be fixed immediately. That's the approach I recommend. It's not the silver bullet, but...
Thank you very much. So can it be done fully automatically? I mean, so if you get such results, like the tool should
You get closer to full automation. If you can do that, you can get closer to full automation. As in, you find stuff, you push it to the defect tracking system, developers take it and fix it. So that's how I would see full automation. You don't have to manually poke at it at any point. You have to maintain it once in a while, going back to his question. Okay, make sure the scan is still doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's not just scanning a random page on my website for some reason, and I'm not getting anything on it. But to get full automation, you need to be very focused with your scanning and only look for things that developers will accept when they see them in the defect tracking system.
Okay, thank you. And another question. Which tools can you recommend for dynamic application security testing?
So I'm from IBM, obviously. I'll try to be honest with everyone. There's a bunch of different tools, right, that you can use. There are a bunch of different tools out there. It's a case of whichever one works for you. There's different reports out there you can use. There's different independent reviews for tooling. If you go to the IBM booth outside, my colleagues will show you the tool we have, and that we can show you how it works. We think it's one of the best, but you can always decide. I'll not give any names, right? I will not give any names. I'll keep it fair to everyone.
Okay,
you didn't call me here to sell stuff.
So if you are talking about like open source tools, for example, is there certain open source tools which we can use on earlier stage of development for free very often?
There are open source tools. I think some of the projects you want to look for is potentially OWASP. They're probably one of the best known in this space. Burp has some stuff, some free stuff you can play with. Those are sort of the ones you would start. But I'll recommend look at open source. Yeah, OWASP. That's the one I've seen people using it, starting playing with it. It stands for Offensive Web Application something. I forgot. I've used the acronym so many times, I don't even know what it stands for, to my embarrassment. I'm sure someone here will know what the OWASP stands for.
Is the WASP tool or it's the approach?
It's sort of a project, tells you how to do testing, and I think they have, well, I think they do have some tooling in there as well.
Okay, thank you.
ZAP and Burp Suite. Then Attack Proxy and Burp Suite for web applications. Any questions? All right, that's it. Thanks a lot, Florin.
Okay.